He wasn't loud, he didn't need to be. He stood at the back of the gym, hoodie up, arms folded, watching the trainer strut across the weight floor like he was auditioning for attention. The guy wasn't coaching. He was performing. And Jason, he was just watching, not with judgment. With awareness, because sometimes silence isn't about restraint, it's about timing. And this man was running out of it. Before we go deeper, where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. Because moments like this, where ego meets discipline, happen everywhere. And what you're about to see, it started with a smirk. The gym was glossy, brand new rubber mats, massive mirrors, shirts that looked tighter than the training itself. Jason had come in quiet, no fanfare, no entourage. Just a friend's invite to hit a few sets and stay sharp while filming nearby. He didn't wear flashy gear, didn't drop his name, just moved through the space like any man who's trained for decades. But that's exactly why the trainer noticed him. Because men who don't perform are the ones that threaten those who do. The trainer's name was Mason, young, ripped, loud. He barked instructions across the gym like he was coaching war, even when the movement was just cable flies. Get that full squeeze, bro, mind muscle, feel that burn. People clapped, laughed, filmed him like he was part of the membership deal. Mason loved it, but when Jason entered the room, he didn't look, didn't record, didn't respond. And that was all it took to start the collision. It began with a glance, then a mutter, then a loud enough comment for the whole gym to hear. Some guys think training for movie roles makes them real athletes. Jason didn't turn. He was adjusting a plate, focused, calm, but the moment didn't slip past anyone. The room paused, just long enough for silence to say this might go somewhere. Another jab came 5 minutes later. Jason was finishing dumbbell rows, controlled reps, no wasted motion. Mason walked by and said loud, "You sure you're not working out for the camera, Hollywood?" Some people chuckled. Jason didn't. He just re-racked the weights and wiped the bench. That's when Mason stepped closer, close enough to be disrespectful, hands on hips, smile stretched thin. "Wanna spar?" he said. Jason looked at him for the first time. No, Mason laughed like he'd won. But Jason wasn't backing down. He was refusing the bait. There's a difference. Most men fight to prove something. Jason doesn't. Because men who have been through real fights don't flinch at ego theater. Mason kept going. "Come on, Statham. Show us that action star footwork." He mimicked a spin kick. Exaggerated, clumsy, mocking. I mean, how hard can choreography be? Jason just watched him, not with anger, with precision, like a man observing a structure about to collapse, and waiting to see which part cracks first. Someone filming whispered, "He's trying too hard." And they were right. Because that's what desperation looks like in public, overcompensation wrapped in volume. Jason finally set his towel down, walked to the center mat. No announcement, no raised voice, just presence. He looked at Mason. "You're moving like you've never been corrected." Mason raised an eyebrow. "What's that supposed to mean?" Jason stepped closer, still calm. "It means you've only trained where no one's told you the truth." Now the gym was locked in. No one spoke, no one lifted. They just watched. Because there's something magnetic about a man who speaks quietly. When everyone else has been yelling to be heard, Mason forced a grin. "All right then. Let's go." Jason shook his head. "No gloves, no ref, no need." Mason snorted. "You scared?" Jason's voice dropped low. "I don't spar with noise, I correct it." The line cracked the air. Because even if you didn't understand fighting, you understood dominance when you heard it. Mason lunged first. A quick step in, shoulder bump, testing range. Jason didn't flinch. Didn't retreat. He sidestepped with barely a shift in posture, enough to let Mason miss by inches, enough to say, "You're not fast enough to even touch me." Mason came again. This time a jab, then a push. Jason caught the wrist mid-motion, twisted not hard. Just enough to move Mason off balance and guide him to the mat. No slam, no drama, just control. Jason let go and stepped back. Mason stood up too fast, angry now, but not at Jason, at the truth he just felt in his body, in his breath, in the eyes watching from all corners of the gym. Jason didn't speak. He didn't need to, because restraint always says more than retaliation. And Mason, he was about to learn that the hard way. Jason had already won the room, but Mason was still fighting the silence. And that's what makes ego dangerous, not when it's loud, but when it's cornered. The trainer shot forward again. No gloves, no technique, just pure panic under pressure. He faked left, then swung wide with his right hand, hoping for surprise. Jason didn't even move his feet, he leaned. Let the punch pass. Tapped Mason's ribs with the flat of his palm on the way out. It wasn't power, it was punctuation. I see you, it said. Mason stumbled, but not physically. He stumbled in presence. Because when a man misses and you don't even counter, you're telling him. You're not even worth the full response. And everyone in the gym felt it. Jason stepped aside. Mason followed, reckless now. Another strike. Another slip. Jason let him close the distance, then rotated his hips. A quick inside elbow, snapped short. Landed clean. Mason dropped to one knee, not out, but unraveled. The room didn't cheer. They inhaled. Because something real had just happened, not viral, not theatrical, real. The kind of moment that makes you look inward, not outward. Jason stepped back, hands down, breathing slow, his voice low but clear. You train like you want to be seen. I train like I want to walk away. Mason looked up, eyes glazed. He wasn't hurt. He was revealed. That's what Jason does best. He doesn't fight the man. He fights the illusion the man built. The coach at the front, who'd stayed silent all session, finally stepped forward, not to stop anything, just to mark the moment. He called out, "Reset." Mason stayed down for another 2 seconds. That silence said everything. He stood up slower now, less bounce in his step, less smirk on his face. He didn't charge again. He backed away, eyes scanning the floor like it might give him a line to save face. But there wasn't one. Jason turned to leave, no speech, no posturing, just calm departure. Because when control has spoken, it doesn't stay to watch its echo. Mason didn't speak the rest of the day. He cleaned equipment, helped a new guy adjust the bench press, corrected a lifter's back arch, but the volume, gone. The voice that used to carry across the floor had dropped to human. And it made him more respected than he ever was, yelling from the top of the squat rack. Later that night, someone posted a grainy clip on Instagram. Jason stepping off the mat, Mason on one knee, no knockout, just exposure. The caption read, "The moment ego met a professional." Comments poured in. He didn't even use power. That was control disguised as silence. Mason got educated. Mason read them all, didn't reply, didn't post a response, didn't delete his account either. He let it sit, let it sting. Because deep down, even in humiliation, something had cracked open, and it wasn't shame, it was clarity. The next week he trained differently. He didn't film anything, didn't offer unsolicited cues. He asked questions instead, watched more, corrected less, and only when needed. And little by little, something strange happened. People started respecting him, not because he was loud, because he was finally present. One morning, Brandon, one of the regulars, walked over. "You okay?" he asked. Mason nodded. Then answered honestly, "It's the first time I feel like I'm actually learning." That's the part no one tells you about regret. It's not about what you lost. It's about what you finally see once everything else falls away. 3 weeks later, Jason came back, unannounced. Same hoodie. Same quiet walk through the entrance. He started with a warm-up set of bodyweight drills in the corner. Didn't look at Mason. Didn't need to. Because Jason doesn't return to relive a moment. He returns to test the environment, to see what stayed. Mason saw him halfway through his own workout. He didn't panic. He didn't hide. He walked over after his set, wiped his hands on a towel, then said simple, "Thanks." Jason looked at him, nodded once, then asked, "Still training or finally studying?" Mason exhaled. "I'm listening now." Jason gave a subtle shrug. "Then you're ahead of most. No fist bump, no bromance, no dramatic finish, just alignment. And that's what real power leaves behind, not bruises, standards." That day, Jason stayed longer than usual. He coached a few basics with Brandon, helped spot someone on their deadlifts, cleaned his equipment after every set. By the end of the session, the room wasn't buzzing. It was focused, like they'd all remembered what training was actually for. Jason didn't stay for pictures, didn't speak to the front desk. He left the way he came in, still, sharp, and finished. Mason watched him walk out, didn't follow, didn't try to explain himself. Because some men teach through words, but others, they teach with presence. By week 5, the gym didn't look any different. Same machines, same lighting, same mats taped at the corners. But the atmosphere, that was new. Something had shifted. And it wasn't because of Jason's presence. It was because of what he left behind. So what did he leave behind? Well, before we dive into it, if you're enjoying this story and love such dramas, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Every new subscriber keeps me motivated to dig deeper, uncover more wild stories, and bring you even crazier content. Your support means everything. It's what keeps this channel going strong. And trust me, there's plenty more chaos coming your way. Back to the story. Mason had stopped yelling. That alone was enough for some people to ask if he was okay. He was. He just wasn't trying to perform anymore. Because when you've been dismantled by someone who didn't raise their voice, you finally understand the difference between attention and authority. He coached differently now, more eyes, fewer words. He corrected people with subtlety, and they listened. Not because he'd beaten someone, but because he'd been willing to change after being humbled. That kind of shift is rare, and people notice. Brandon came up to him one morning after a sparring session. "You gonna post again soon?" Mason smiled lightly. "I think I was talking too much before I had anything worth saying." Brandon nodded. That made sense to him, because what Jason had shown them wasn't just a technique, it was a philosophy. Stillness is louder than force. Awareness is heavier than muscle. And silence, the right kind, speaks louder than any punch. Jason didn't come back again. But no one needed him to, because the message had already rooted itself in the walls. You could feel it in how guys wrapped their hands with intention, in how they stood after a bad round. Less self-pity, more reflection, more presence. There was one final shift no one expected. Mason started offering private sessions, not as the hype guy, not as Coach Mason, just quietly to people who were serious. He didn't advertise it. He didn't raise his rate. He just said, "If you're here to train your ego, I'm not your guy." And that filtered the room better than any gym policy ever could. One day, a brand new member stepped in, younger, flashier, loud on his stories. He did a few sets too fast, posted a mirror selfie, started correcting someone else's form mid-set. Old Mason would have cheered it on. The new one. He walked up, calm. "You knew?" The guy nodded. "Yeah, just moved here." Mason offered a hand. "Cool, we move quiet here. If you're into that, stick around." The guy raised an eyebrow, didn't argue, just nodded and went back to his reps, slower this time. That's what legacy looks like. Not applause, calibration. Brandon asked Mason one day, "Why didn't you ever ask him for a second round?" Mason shook his head. "Because it wasn't a fight, it was a correction." Brandon thought about that. "Does it ever bug you how many people saw it?" Mason looked around the gym, calm, collected, then said, "No, because they saw what I became after. And that was the real victory, because most people think getting humbled ends the story. But the truth is, it's where the real story starts." One morning, Brandon opened the gym before sunrise, lights still warming up, air heavy and cool, and pinned to the whiteboard in black marker was a quote, "Don't train to be seen. Train so you don't flinch when someone sees all of you." No signature, but everyone knew Jason had been there. Just long enough to write the sentence, just short enough to remain a ghost. Mason stood there and read it twice, then smiled. He didn't take a photo, didn't post it. He just erased it and carried it, because men like Jason don't speak to be quoted. They speak to plant something. And the ones who get it, they grow. Final reflection: the real fight was never on the mat. It was in the mirror, and most men never make it past the first round. But if you survive it, if you stop swinging long enough to listen, you stop performing, and you start becoming. Jason didn't just shut someone down, he opened something up, and what came after wasn't pain, it was precision.